Hello, Gracie Poo. A long time ago, when your mom was about your age, when it was time for her to go to bed at night, I would either read her stories or tell her stories. And the stories that your mom and your Uncle Ben liked the best were Spaceman Spiff stories. Um, Maybe we can read some Spaceman Spiff stories next time you're up here. So I decided to write my own story, and this is what it is: Escape to Mars. It's about Billy and Amber, and I'm going to read you the first chapter. All right, chapter 1. I suspected something was wrong when Dad didn't make it home for dinner. Not that he always made it, and it weren't Mom's cooking neither, so keep that to yourself. As I reckoned it, in the last week, he'd eaten dinner with Mom and me a total of 2 times. And one of those times, he was half at the dinner table and half inside his pocket calculator. He said there were still a lot of calculations to do for the big experiment on Tuesday morning. We've lived through a lot of these big experiments, Mom and me. It usually meant a month of being orphaned and then a week of vacation. A big experiment on Tuesday morning, meant that he'd be on the couch sleeping on Tuesday afternoon, and we'd do something fun on Wednesday, like go to the water park or at least get a hamburger. And then he'd take something called comp time for a while. I figure comp is some lab word for family. But there was no such luck this time. Tuesday afternoon came and went with no Dad on the couch. Mom had planned her famous lasagna: cheese, garlic bread, salad, and that disgusting asparagus thing she makes as a celebration. But Dad's mid-afternoon phone call put the dampers on that, and I ended up choking down some leftover noodle stuff from the potluck supper at church. I usually sleep through just about anything, but I guess all that accumulated worry from my feeling that something was wrong kept me on edge. Dad called again at 2:30 in the morning. Mom is used to Dad's crazy schedule, but this time she sounded upset. Why? What? I don't understand what you're saying. If you're right, what can we do about it? Why not come home? I wonder sometimes how prophets and magicians and news reporters can see and hear what's going on in secret meetings and stuff. But at that moment, I'd swear I saw my dad sitting at his desk with his ear plugged into the phone, shaking his head no. My bad feeling only got worse. Okay, so the latest quark collision what's-in-the-doodle didn't work. That's happened before, and Dad didn't call in the middle of the night, and Mom didn't sound so worried. You see, my dad worked in this physics lab, where they do all kinds of crazy experiments with stuff you can't see, and I can hardly imagine. Quarks and gluons and all kinds of weird stuff. Subatomic particles, they're called. This time they fired some of these particle things through a huge gun, Dad calls it an accelerator, and made these teeny tiny particle things smash together at billions of miles an hour. I keep telling Dad I want to watch one of these crashes, but he says it's not much to see. It all takes place inside the machine. I don't see the point in making a big deal crash like that unless you get to watch it, but Dad's got different priorities, I guess. He says they can measure what happens in other ways. And I figure maybe it's too bright and too hot to look at, since it's supposed to be like the stuff that happens inside the sun. Anyway, I figured the big gun melted or something, and Dad was in a pile of trouble. Dad finally showed up at breakfast the next morning. At least the worn out part of him showed up. I hoped he'd left something back at the lab, because it was hard to see this package as being the same guy who'd left a couple days before. I'd seen him lots of times after a night without sleep. He could sit in front of that computer until Mom got frisky and yanked him upstairs, or his contact lenses dried out right there on his eyeballs. But this was more than that. He really looked sad, like the dad in Hop on Pop. I hear some kids wish they could become invisible. Well, I figured it out. When something really serious is going on, you sit real quiet and eat slow and obey all the table rules. Presto, you're invisible. There could be a fire in the kitchen, and Mom would know if you used your knife in the butter dish, but they can't see you at all if you don't act like a kid. And then you can listen in on juicy conversations. Is there anything I can do, dear? Mom asked. For the longest time, Dad didn't seem to hear her. He just sat there with his coffee cup halfway between the table and his mouth, the steam swirling every time he breathed. Otherwise, you might have thought he was some sick person's idea for a decoration. Huh? He said, looking up lazily. No, he murmured, and finally took a sip of coffee. I don't think there's anyone can do. It's just a matter of time. What was a matter of time? Those words gave me a terrible feeling in my belly, like I'd eaten a whole bag of jelly beans. Were we going to lose our house? Was somebody dying? Were we at war? What is it, John? Please tell me, Mom said with the voice of an angel. Anybody who could have resisted that voice would have been dead already, or the devil himself. My dad's not the violent type. He hardly ever raises his voice. But those sweet words pulled him straight from being a zombie to being some kind of maniac. He smashed down his coffee cup, spilling it all over himself and half the table, and yelled, "The whole world's being eaten up like a worm-ridden apple, and it's my fault!" Then he dropped his head into his hands and sobbed. My mom immediately ran to comfort him, but I was paralyzed. The world was being eaten up? By what? And where do you hide from something like that? I went into super invisibility mode. I didn't move and hardly dared to breathe, as Mom finally coaxed it all out. The super collider thing didn't do what they'd expected. It took those molecule things they were throwing around the room and made a miniature black hole out of them, which is something smaller and nastier than that stuff in Little Cat Z's hat, and it doesn't clean up snow. Dad suspected that this black hole thing had fallen into the core of the Earth, and that it would suck every little bit of everything into itself. He wasn't exactly sure how long it would take, but it wouldn't be long. This was more than I could take. With my Pop-Tart hanging half out of my mouth, I garbled, "Will it hurt, Dad?" "Billy, what are you—" I had thought my dad looked sad before, but when he looked at me, he started crying all over again. And then I cried, and Mom cried, and we were all crying all over the dining room, so we'd probably have flooded the place if Dad's phone hadn't interrupted us. My dad pulled the thing off his belt with trembling hands, looked at the display, and something like hope seemed to stir in his face. But it was quickly replaced with surprise and concern. "What is it, John?" "They say they have a plan, and they want all of us down at the lab right now." "All of us? What can we do?" I thought. "And why are we getting closer to that machine? That's the last place I want to be." The spilled coffee must have seeped into Dad's skin, because suddenly he was a ball of fire. He grabbed the box of Pop-Tarts, shoved it halfway through my chest, and nearly dragged me out of my chair toward the front door. "I don't know, but if there's anything we can do, it's got to be soon. Let's go." "John, the coffee pot," Mom began, but Dad grabbed her arm with his other hand and dragged us by main force out the front door and into the blue station wagon. I looked back at the house, wondering what would happen when the black hole swallowed it up. It was the last time I'd ever see the place. All right, Gracie Poo, that's chapter 1. Hope you liked it.